We are here during the Four Nations break, but what are the Islanders' chances of making the playoffs? We break it all down for you, plus a change in Noah Dobson situation, all that and more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Thursday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. I'm Gil Martin. I've been covering the New York Islanders for almost 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the New York Rangers, going from 1972 all the way to the modern era. Great to have you here as we talk a little Islanders hockey. Today, we are going to assess where this team is at the break. We're going to give you some injury updates, and, well, one player who is due to be an RFA this year has switched agents. We'll talk a little bit about what that means. Let's start with where the Islanders stand at the moment. We are at the All-Star break, which this year is not just a weekend, but, it's the Four Nations break, and so the Islanders have 2 weeks in between games. And the short answer right now as to where the Islanders are, they are 25, 23-7, 57 points in 55 games. That places them 4 points behind Detroit for the second wild card spot. As of right now, no games in hand. They are 1 more point, 5 points behind Ottawa for the first wild card spot, but the Islanders do have a game in hand over the Senators. However, keep in mind that in addition to the Senators and the Red Wings, Columbus is 3 points ahead of the Islanders. The Islanders have a game in hand. Boston is 3 points ahead of the Islanders. The Islanders have 2 games in hand on the Bruins. The Rangers are 1 point ahead of the Islanders. The Canadiens are 2 points behind the Islanders. The Islanders have a game in hand. The Penguins, 2 points behind the Islanders. The Islanders have 2 games in hand. Same with the Flyers. They have 2 more games played than the Islanders, and they're 2 points behind. All these teams, right now, there are 8 teams going for 2 playoff spots. And, the question becomes, what are the odds that the Islanders make the playoffs? And, The Athletic did an article recently that discussed all the teams that are battling for that Eastern Conference playoff spot and what their playoff odds are. They used a computer model and tried to figure that out. And so, the Islanders' odds are that they have a 26% chance of making the playoffs, according to this computer model. Approximately 1 in 4. And again, we're talking about a lot of teams. The good news is that the Islanders 11-6 since the calendars flipped to 2025. But the bad news is that that's probably about the pace they're going to have to continue to play at for the rest of the season in order to get into a playoff spot. That, getting roughly 2 out of every 3 possible points, a little less than that, but roughly 2 out of every 3 possible points that are left on the table is what it's going to take. And again, even if the Islanders do get into the playoffs, what is most likely awaiting them is a first-round matchup with the Washington Capitals or the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers, or maybe the Toronto Maple Leafs. Those are the most likely opponents that the Islanders would face. Maybe Carolina again, but it doesn't look like Carolina is ready to pass Washington. Those are the most likely opponents. And clearly, there is no doubt that the Islanders would be underdogs in any series against any one of those teams that I mentioned. So that in order to win the Stanley Cup, the Islanders would have to pull off 4 straight upsets in a row to get that done, to win the Cup. They would have to beat Florida and, Washington and Toronto and Tampa Bay and then whoever emerges out of the West. It is going to be a long shot. Now, they do have some things going for them. Among them, Ilya Sorokin has played really, really well. And, that 11-6 run has largely been because of Sorokin. In his last 13 games, Sorokin has a .926 save percentage. And, he has been in 13 appearances, 9 quality starts. That is outstanding. And, when you have that good goalie, that allows the team to pull off an upset, perhaps, in one of these playoff rounds if the Islanders can get in. Now, you have Sorokin playing at a high level. We do not know at this point, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later on in the show, but we don't know what the backup situation is. We do not know who's going to be healthy when the break is over and the teams start playing again. And the one thing that the Islanders cannot do, and they did it last year, they cannot wear Ilya Sorokin out. And, Patrick Waugh is going to want to play Sorokin almost every game. He can't do it. Again, yes, it allows you to maybe squeak into the playoffs if Sorokin continues to play at the top of his game and the Islanders continue to do some of the things they've been doing a little bit better. Well, but we now have 27 games left on the schedule. Even if Sorokin plays 20 of those 27 games, which would give him 60 starts, or roughly 60 games, 59 starts for the season, that is asking a lot of your goalie. And last year, we saw Sorokin wear down, and he couldn't even finish the season. The last 10 games or so, it was all Semyon Varlamov. And in the playoffs, except for a cameo appearance where he was not effective in Game 3, it was all Semyon Varlamov. Sorokin was, I don't know if the back was bothering him. I don't know if the back injury existed at that point and whether or not it was related to the overwork that he had last year. So that has to be figured out, okay? And then everydayers, we've talked about this a few times before. A 26% chance of making the playoffs at all, with the odds of you winning a playoff series being less than 50%, obviously. You would be a big underdog against Washington, against, Florida, against Toronto. It is, and then you got to do that 3 more times. The question is, and this is the key question that the general manager of this team should be asking. The way this team is put together right now, have they reached their ceiling? Is this barely being able to make the playoffs and then hoping to get hot at the right time to go on a run? Is this the best this team can do? Well, I don't know. But the evidence right now points to yes. It has been 3 seasons in a row that the Islanders failed to win a playoff series. Last year and 2023, they lost easily in the first round to the Carolina Hurricanes. The year before that, they missed the playoffs entirely. This year, the best case scenario appears to be they squeak into the playoffs again and most likely face an exit in the first round. If the answer to the question is yes, if this team has maxed out as of right now, you've got to do a retool. And this coming trade deadline and off season is your big opportunity to do that. Brock Nelson, Kyle Palmieri, their contracts are up. They are unrestricted free agents. We've already talked every day, as you know, we've talked about how in demand Brock Nelson could be. Kyle Palmieri won't be in as high a demand as Nelson, but you darn well better believe they can get a solid return for Kyle Palmieri, whether it's a second and a fourth or a middle six player who's younger than Kyle Palmieri. They can get something for him. You've got guys like Anders Lee and J.G. Pageau who have 1 year left on their contract. So whether it's at this trade deadline or at the draft, these guys can be traded. And Anders Lee, look, I like all these guys, but Anders Lee's value, considering his age and his productivity this year compared to last year, it's never going to be higher. This is the big opportunity for the New York Islanders this offseason and this trade deadline to retool instead of rebuild. But if you re-sign Kyle Palmieri and Brock Nelson and don't get a good return on these assets and you bring them back as they get to be 35, 36, 37, there are diminishing returns for too much money, and the team that has been stuck in the muddy middle sinks below the muddy middle, and we just don't have a great farm system right now. All the good players in the farm system, 2-3 years away minimum, and there's not enough of them to replace all the guys we've mentioned and a few other veterans. So this is crucial for the New York Islanders to be productive this trade deadline between now and the start of the new season in the fall of 2025. It's a crossroads. And hopefully Lou Lamoriello figures that out, because doing the same thing over and over and over again when it hasn't worked, that's the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over and hoping for a different result. Let's hope that there's a different path taken and that the Islanders figure this out. All right, we have got more to get to. Noah Dobson has a new agent. We'll talk about that and what it may mean. We'll have an injury update on all the Islanders' injured players. And for our Islanders' birthday of the day, a goalie who was with the Islanders in the early 2010s, who played at the University of Michigan. Let's see if you can guess who that is. We've got all that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats that helps you feel full longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days, whether I'm snacking on my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost. They're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, The in-shell options are a classic favorite. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. That's wonderfulpistachios.com. So, little news about Noah Dobson. And it'll be interesting to see how this news kind of plays out. Noah Dobson has changed agents. And right now, he was represented by Maloney and Thompson Sports Management, Andrew Maloney being his primary agent. But right now, he will be with Wasserman Hockey, with Olivier Fortier being the lead agent, Judd Moldaver being sort of the other option. These guys now represent players like Roman Josi, Brett Pesce, Zach Werenski, and we'll see. We'll see how this all plays out. But here is the thing about these agents. They are not really known for signing really long-term deals. And the Islanders are at a crossroads right now with Dobson because they have three options. He's a restricted free agent at the end of this year. And he's coming off a season right now where offensively his production has dropped significantly as compared to a year ago. Defensively, his play has been pretty bad. And I know there are some people, they look at the analytics and they say, oh, yeah, his play hasn't been that bad in the overall scheme of things. But just look at the eye test, okay? He turns the puck over a lot. He doesn't, he does things that don't necessarily show up cleanly in analytics, like not picking up a man in front of the goal consistently or being in no man's land, not going behind the goal, not going, to pick up a guy, but just sort of lingering in between. He turns the puck over more often in his own zone than you would like. There are things about his game that just have been subpar. He's a -8 plus-minus. He has 6 goals and 24 points in 46 games, which is roughly on pace for about 43 points over an 82-game season after having 70 points a year ago. He's 25 years old. So here's the thing about Noah Dobson. He's an RFA with arbitration rights. The Islanders can point to his season this year with all the games he's missed, with all the inconsistent play, especially the bad defensive play, and say, hey, not worth a lot. And his agent is going to point to last season and say, hey, 70 points in 80 games, still only 25 years old. Pay the man based on his potential and his productivity. And, whether the Islanders can reach an agreement with Noah Dobson on a bridge deal or whether it goes to arbitration for the 1-year deal, the arbitrator will probably come down somewhere in the middle between what Dobson wants and what the Islanders are willing to pay. Here's the sort of shadow that's hanging over the head of Noah Dobson and the Islanders. You could get that bridge deal. You could maybe sign him to a 1, 2, 3-year deal right now. Okay? But in a couple of years, Noah Dobson will have the right to be an unrestricted free agent. And let's face facts. As of now, estimates are he's going to get a deal at $8 to $8.5 million a year. So in a couple of years, that number with the cap going up, assuming Noah Dobson plays to his potential. Let's even say he gets 65 points next year and cleans up a little defensively. That number is going to likely go up. And the question is Noah Dobson worth 6, 7, 8 years at $8.5, $9.5 million a year? On the one hand, defensemen who can score 70 plus points in a season don't grow on trees. On the other hand, you have this inconsistent play. The defense has been dreadful. The offense has been not up to expectations this year. Do you feel you can commit that much money and that much term to him? Or are you better off trading him, knowing full well that he could easily come back and be a perennial all-star, an elite defenseman who comes back to haunt you because he's the guy you let get away? That is the dilemma that either Lou Lamoriello or whoever the GM of the Islanders is going to be next year or the year after, or however far out you go with whatever deal gets done, has to determine. And the other option is at some point to entertain trades. And there have been rumors out there that the Maple Leafs are interested in Noah Dobson, or the Jets, or different teams have been mentioned as interested in Noah Dobson. I would entertain trades for Noah Dobson, but to move on from this kid, with all his flaws notwithstanding, I need to be blown away by whatever offer is on the table. I don't just want a good deal. I want, to speak the parlance of a certain famous movie, an offer I can't refuse. I want to be so blown out of the water that I am comfortable moving on from Noah Dobson, that even if Noah Dobson turns out to be that all-star player I talked about, what you get in return is good enough to say, yeah, we let him get away, but look at what we got. Look at what we got back. We'll see how this plays out. It's going to be not just the next, month or two. I think this is going to be an interesting next 6 months to see whether we sign Dobson to a bridge deal, a long-term deal, trade him, or go to arbitration. All of these things are possible. We have our poll up on YouTube, so you can weigh in on that, and interested to see what everybody thinks. All right, we have got more to get to on today's show. We're going to update the injured Islanders players, plus we'll have our Islanders birthday of the day. All that still to come on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Factor. Looking to optimize your nutrition this year? Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences, every week you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle, whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. Plus, Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfast, and grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled all day long. I love how Factor takes the stress out of meal planning. The convenience is unbeatable. No prep, no mess, just great food in minutes. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 off and use code LockedOnNHL50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code LockedOnNHL50 off at factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from hosts Steele and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I wanted to do a little injury update. It's been such an issue for the Islanders all season long. And they got to get healthy. Let's face it. Or at least they've got to get as healthy as they can. And here we are with this 2-week break. First of all, Anthony Duclair has got to get healthy. He's been playing. He returned from his injury, but it is clear he is not 100%. And I'm not getting on Anthony Duclair, but hopefully these 2 weeks off will get him healthy enough to contribute on a regular basis during the last 20 plus games after the break. You got Ryan Pollock and Noah Dobson. They are both expected to be on the ice next week, the second week of the Four Nations break. Dobson cannot come back for at least one more game after the break. He's got to sit out one more because he is, as of now, on LTIR. Pollock can be activated at any time. Again, the fact that he will begin skating next week does not mean we have a timetable necessarily for his return, but it means progress is being made, and we'll see. Then you have Marcus Hogberg, the backup goalie right now. And we talked about this earlier. Everydayers know we can't let Ilya Sorokin get worn out and play, 20 out of the last 22 games. Can't happen. Hogberg was supposed to be out 4 weeks with his upper body injury. Well, that is right around the timetable for when we resume action. So they're going to need a backup. And we know Semyon Varlamov is out indefinitely. He's on LTIR. Not counting on Varley being ready. So it's got to be Hogberg, and we'll see how that plays out. Scott Mayfield, lower body injury. He was only listed as day-to-day and missed the last, 2 games before the break. Hopefully he's ready to come back, and it is vital for him to return because the Islanders cannot go with 5 defensemen. Everydayers, we talked about this a couple of days ago, where they only played Dennis Cholowski for less than 3 minutes in an entire game on a back-to-back last Saturday. Can't do that. Cannot do that. Got to have 6 defensemen who you trust to play minutes. They need Mayfield back. Matthew Barzal out indefinitely. Don't expect him to be ready anytime soon. Same with Mike Riley, who has been skating, but again, no timetable yet for Riley to come back. So hopefully we start to get some of these guys healthier again, and we get a little more productivity from guys like Anthony Duclair. Mayfield comes back and can give you the 18, 20, 22 minutes a game, maybe more, depending on everyone else's health. These are important things if the Islanders are going to have any chance of making a playoff run, and we'll keep you up to date as soon as we get new news about that. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day, and today is the 40th birthday of former Islanders goalie Al Montoya. Il Cubano, a native of Chicago, first-round pick of the Rangers in 2004, 6th overall, 3 seasons at the University of Michigan, made his NHL debut with the Coyotes in 08-09, played 2 seasons with the Islanders in 2010-11 and 2011-2012, then played for the Jets, the Panthers, the Canadiens, and the Oilers, and then spent 1 season in the AHL before hanging up his skates after the 2018-2019 season. Played in 168 NHL games, had a 2.65 career goals against average, and a .908 save percentage. One of his better games as an Islander, November 29th, 2011, the Islanders visiting the Buffalo Sabres. Obviously, Al Montoya, the goalie for the Islanders, Jonas Enroth, the goalie for the Sabres. And in this game, the Islanders get goals by Matt Molson and Brian Ralston to end up with a 2-1 win over the Buffalo Sabres. But in this game, our Islanders' birthday of the day, Al Montoya, faces 31 shots. He makes 30 saves for a .968 save percentage and comes up big in this road win over the Buffalo Sabres. So happy birthday to Al Montoya. He is our Islanders' birthday of the day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Every day as we're back tomorrow with more on the Islanders injury situation. We'll also talk a little bit about how Team USA did in their first game at the Four Nations tournament and how Brock Nelson did in those games. So make sure you join us for that. We're working on some special guests as well for next week, so we'll keep you posted about that. And if you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You could also follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long, and we are live tweeting during nearly every Islanders home and road game. So join me for some instant insight and analysis, and it's great to talk Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe, and of course, let's go Islanders.